Okay, so a quick radiator cover build. Now I'm ripping some elements out of 18mm MDF, just standard MDF. Now a friend of mine, he's got a couple of radiator covers already, but he wanted one a specific size for a radiator, so he asked me to build him one. So I'm making it out of 18mm MDF for the frame and the top, and this is 6mm standard MDF for the slats. I've ripped the elements on the table saw and I'm cross cutting them on the miter saw. But if you haven't got a table saw or a miter saw, then you could use a track saw, or failing that you could always ask them at the DIY centre if they will cut the pieces up for you. I always go to B&Q and ask them to rip or cross cut a board for me, just to make it easier to handle or easier to get in my van. If you're enjoying this video, then please consider subscribing to the channel. So these are the 6mm MDF slats. I've banged them all together and I'm sanding the edges just with a bit of 120 grit sandpaper. This is so I can apply some paint to them now, so it's a lot easier to paint them before they go on the radiator cover, because trying to paint all these little edges when they're attached to the radiator cover will be a nightmare, so I'm doing it now. Bullnose cutter in the router table. This is to put a bullnose profile on the top and the sides of the radiator cover. So I'm just marking out the pieces here. I've found the centre of the rails, and then I've marked out the munting on the rails. So on the stiles, marked out the spacer block, the top rail, the munting and the bottom rail. It's easier to use the elements rather than trying to measure and mark. So mark one stile and then transfer the lines to the other stile. So I've labelled up all the pieces just so I know what goes where and what each piece is. And if you notice these little marks here, the two little dashes, that's to tell me what edges need the round over cut on them. So a little trend trim router with a tiny little round over cutter. Just eases all the edges. It's basically taking an arris off the edges. So please go check out my website, spendtimesavemoney.com, and I also have a Patreon page if you want to support the channel, or a super thanks. Links can be found in the description below. So now I'm just marking off where I need to put number 20 biscuits. And I get to use my brand new Trend biscuit jointer. Trend kindly gifted this to the channel to help support me and what I'm doing. And if you notice, I am using quite a few Trend tools. I'm really impressed with them, not just because they've been gifted to me, just I really like using them. So I will leave Amazon affiliate links in the description below. So if you do buy through them links, then the channel does get a tiny bit of commission, which helps me out greatly, but it doesn't cost you any more. So I'm really impressed with this biscuit jointer. It's a lot better than the one I used to have anyway. And I've attached it up to the Trend vacuum or shop vac, and virtually dust free. So I've decided to biscuit it and pocket hole it. Use pocket hole screws just so I don't have to use big clamps. So I can put the biscuits in, bit of glue in, a couple of pocket hole screws, and I don't need to use a clamp, a big long clamp. And then when the glue's dry, I can take the screws out and use them again next time. So it may take a little bit longer, but if you haven't got big long clamps, it'll certainly help you out, and it just makes life easier rather than trying to clamp up a big frame like this. Now, I'm not normally the biggest fan of pocket hole screws, but in instances like this they do have the uses. So I'm using Gorrilla Polyurethane glue. Now, someone left me a comment saying, where does the glue get the moisture from? So someone's probably told them it needs water for the glue to cure, but it'll cure with the moisture out the air. I've never had to wet a joint for polyurethane glue to dry, so I've always had good results. So this is how I do it. Just put it in the slot, put it in the biscuits. The biscuits will swell because it's compressed beech with the moisture in the glue, and it'll have a rock solid joint. So this little piece at the top, a bit small to put a pocket hole screw in, so I've just thrown the clamp on it. Now, because of the edge profile on the side piece, I want the frame to marry up to it like that. So I've had to offset the biscuit slot. So on the frame, I cut them on the scale at 9mm. Now I've dropped it to 16mm just to compensate for that round over. So here's a little test piece I've done. And that's how I want the frame to finish on the side piece. And again, just a few pocket hole screws to hold the sides on. I'm just transferring the marks to the back here because I'm going to glue it face down because of the pocket hole screws. So I'm just where the rails need to be. So, a bit of polyurethane glue on the biscuits, a little bit on the slots, and the screws do the job of the long clamps. Now I'm just putting a little clamp on to keep the joints flush. So the sides, just a few biscuits, bit of glue, and then the pocket hole screws hold it all together. No clamps required. The only thing you've got to watch for is that it screws on square. If the MDF's been cut square, then it should be fine. So the top, I need rounded over corners, so mark it with something that's round, knock off the corner with a saw, and then just blend in the profile with a block and a piece of sandpaper. And then just finish it off just with a bit of sandpaper. So I've marked out where all the slats are going and worked out the spacings. So I've got a 15mm spacing using a bit of tight bond glue, 2 little dabs, and then some 15mm 18 gauge brad nails. A couple of spacer blocks, a couple of dabs of glue again, and some more pins. And just repeat. So the top I've screwed it on with angle brackets, and a couple of angle brackets at the back so I can attach the radiator cover to the wall. I've also got another video about fitting radiator covers, so I'll link to that in the description below, so go check that out as well. To finish it, I'm using 2 coats of undercoat and 2 coats of satin top coat with a light sanding in between coats. Just sprayed with my spray gun attached to my compressor. It's the easiest way to paint these. It's really time consuming and difficult to paint them with a brush and a roller, so the best way is to spray them. So there's the radiator cover finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.